What's up guys, this is Josh from KeepItTechie, and today I want to do a quick video showing you 5 things you should do on your Linux server as soon as you set it up. So as I stated in the intro of the video, I wanted to show you guys 5 things you should do right after you install a Linux server OS. It could be Ubuntu, it could be CentOS. These are 5 things that I recommend you do as soon as you set up that server. And most of these tips you probably heard before, as well as I've done plenty of videos on a lot of these tips when working on servers, and I mainly did it on Ubuntu. But I want to walk you through those 5 things and use it, and you can use this video as a reference. So whenever you set up a new Linux server, just follow these 5 steps, and these are things that you should do when you provision a new server. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you want to do to secure your Linux server is to update the system. And I know this sounds very simple, but you want to make sure you do this as soon as possible, because when you download a Linux ISO, a lot of times the ISO is not up to date. It could be a month old, it could be 3 months old when they last updated that ISO that's in the repository that you downloaded. So you want to make sure you update the system, and therefore you'll get all the latest updates, security patches, and all that good stuff for your system. And like I stated, this is a very important thing for you to do in order to keep your server secure. Okay, and number 2 is to create a new privileged user account on the actual server. Now this is another important step that you want to do to secure your server, because you never want to log into your server using the root account, or you never want to get comfortable using the root account on your system. I know in a lot of server distributions like Ubuntu, it comes with the root account disabled by default, and you have to create a privileged user account that's separate from the root account during the installation. And a lot of servers come with that feature nowadays. When you're installing Linux, during the installation, it'll force you to create a non-privileged account, and a lot of times it'll ask you if you want to use the same password for the root account. So in that case, you want to go in and actually disable that root account. That way no one can actually log into it, because this is an account that basically gives you God mode on the server, and you want to hold on to that account dearly, because if someone gets root access to your server, then it's game over. They have full control over that server and can do whatever they want. And just to give you a few examples, you can use the add user command, and that'll create a user account for you, and you just simply add it to the sudo group, and you will have a privileged user account on the server. Okay, and number 3, my favorite part of actually securing a server is generating and uploading your SSH keys to that server. Now this is a great idea for you to do on whatever server that you're working on, because a lot of times when you set up a server, you want to run it headless, meaning you don't have a keyboard or a mouse or monitor hooked up to it, because you can use SSH to actually fully manage that server remotely. And you can also open up ports on your network that'll allow you to manage that server from anywhere in the world, as long as you know the IP address, or you have a URL that's associated with that IP address that you can constantly log into that server from wherever you are. But it's always best to use SSH keys when logging into a server remotely, especially when it's over the net, because soon as you open up a SSH server to the internet, it's gonna start getting a lot of people trying to brute force it. And a way to mitigate that is to actually turn off password authentication after you have installed your SSH keys that'll allow you to remote into the server. But that's number 3. You want to go ahead and generate those SSH keys and push your public key to the server, and that way you can log into it remotely using that SSH key without having to type in a password. Okay, and number 5, and the last final step that you need to do when you first log into your freshly set up server is to enable the firewall. In most cases, the firewall is disabled as soon as you turn on the server, or as soon as the server comes up after freshly installation. So you have to go in and physically enable it. And for Ubuntu and many other Linux servers, there's an application you can install called UFW, and this will allow you to manage your firewall. It basically stands for uncomplicated firewall, which I've actually done a video on that as well, so you guys can check that video out as well. I'll put the link down in the description box below. But basically UFW sits on top of IP tables, which is the actual firewall software. It's just UFW actually makes it simpler to manage IP tables, because the commands can be kind of complicated for IP tables, especially if you're new to Linux. But UFW actually makes it simple. So you want to install UFW, and this will allow you to manage the server's firewall. And just to throw a quick bonus out there, one of the last things you want to do, and this ties to SSH, is actually setting up fail to ban. Now, I've done a video on this as well, and I went through in depth on how to actually configure fail to ban. But fail to ban is basically an application that prevents people from brute forcing your system, and it protects against a number of different services, like SSH for one. I know MySQL, you can set it up to protect like Apache at some point, or it's just certain services on the server that you can protect. But SSH is the main one that I use. But you can go into fail to ban's configuration file and set up, all the services. It has a list of services that you can go in. It all depends on what services you're running on that actual server that you may want to protect. But what happens is with fail to ban is when you set up the configuration, you can set a number of failed authentications on the server. So when a person or an IP address reaches the max amount of failed attempts, it'll block that IP address, so that person cannot send another request from that IP address, depending on how long you put the IP address in jail. And that's all done within the configuration file. If you have any questions, like I stated, I have a detailed video on this called fail to ban. You could just search on my channel, but that's something that I wanted to give you as a bonus in this list. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. I hope this helps you when setting up a brand new server. It could be CentOS, Ubuntu. This list will pretty much cover any Linux server that you may set up. It could be an Arch install with no desktop that you're running, server applications on. This video will still apply to that situation. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, please leave comments down in the comment boxes below. And of course, keep it techie.